Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Topic. And this week I am running for the hills because we've got tsunamis and volcanoes and aliens descending upon us. I'm Alex.
And I'm trying to avoid the end of the world. And I am Dan.
And this week we've got another vault for you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And it's an absolute corker. It is our Disaster Movies Volume 1.
All the way back from the pandemic.
Yeah, May 2020.
Was it that long?
It was. And
Jeez.
it's the thing, you can tell it does sound a little bit unpolished, but you know it was a thing of its time. 3 years ago, almost to the day, we were trying to work out how to remotely record, keeping legal, not being in the same room, unlike today, which is lovely, and talk about some of our favourite movies of all time.
Yes.
We had some great ones actually, Dan. This was your episode.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Only because it was inspired by our favourite 90s films. I think we discovered that actually when I have a hangover, my favourite go-to is a disaster film. Maybe that's because my head's a disaster and I've got a thumping headache and I'm trying to stay hydrated, but there we go.
Or you had an absolute disaster the night before, but either way, yeah.
Probably.
We had a lot of fun this one, actually, and we had quite a few. I mean, there's only a couple that I'll pick out because, of course, you'll listen to it in a couple of moments, listener. But we've got anything from significantly world events for earthquakes. We've got world freezing disasters, to planet-killing meteorites and everything else. Zombies features, which I didn't really expect actually when I listened to it back for this episode. We both came up with two different ones, which was good. And you had a bit of homework, and I want to find out 2 years later, Dan, whether you fulfilled your homework, or 3 years later. Did you end up seeing Deep Blue Sea?
I don't think I did.
Damn.
I need to go and watch it. This is 3 years too late.
It's not good enough, really, and I think the listener demands more from you. It demands more. So, obviously one of mine is a giveaway. It's Deep Blue Sea, and I think it's a cracking disaster film because what else is more scary than being stuck in the ocean with an intelligent shark?
And one of my choices was Dogma.
It was.
Kevin Smith, Jay and Silent Bob. Probably one of the better. I mean, I quite enjoy the Kevin Smith stuff anyway, but that's
very
probably
unique.
It's God tier, Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I agree. So we had a lot of fun doing this, and I was just saying to Dan before we recorded, actually, probably should do a second volume, really.
I think we probably should.
There's plenty of out, but I think there's actually a couple since we last recorded.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't listened to the episode before, you're an absolute treat, listener. I mean, ignore the fact that, as I say, it's a product of the pandemic. It was a very unique time, as we all know. But do enjoy the episode. We've got a good amount of listener interaction, actually.
We did.
In that one. So, sit back and relax. And if you want to contribute to the second one, get in contact and let us know. But otherwise, here is our and your Disaster Movies, Volume 1.
Hello, Radsters! You are listening to the weekly Roundup with Alex and Dan. I'm here with my cat Quill. I'm Dan.
And I have no cat, but I'm still Alex. And yeah, welcome to another episode of the weekly Roundup. And it's a long time coming, this one, but it's an exciting one, Dan. What have we got in store for our listener today?
Well, we're going to be talking about disaster films. If people want to listen to me talk about some of my favourite disaster films, go listen to our 90s films, which I think we did late last year.
That's a really good one, yeah. And we waxed lyrical mainly about Independence Day, but some other ones, and that was a really good episode. So yeah, if you haven't listened to that one, I'll put it in the description below, and that was a really good episode.
We also learned a good disaster film is a cure for a bad hangover.
It is, especially if your name's Dan. And look, we're kind of in an interesting situation, right? And I think this is kind of like a bad hangover. You know, you're working from home, you've got to try and work stuff out. You know, you can't see your friends or your family. It could constitute either a bad nightmare or a bad hangover. So what better way, perhaps, to try and fuel and make you feel better and to get your spirits up than to watch people end their lives in horrific ways, and it's the end of the world by watching disaster films. So hopefully we'll give you some light relief during the course of the next 40 or so minutes, and we'll bring you some interesting favourite disaster movies, and thankfully, due to the power of social media, some of yours. And Dan, we've got some star listeners who have actually recorded their voices and have contributed this week, haven't we?
Yeah, one of them is really nice. They as I'll sort of find out later, our listeners, one of them said, it's great to have you guys to listen to in these times of trouble. And that means a lot for me. I love what we do, and actually we can bring a bit of joy to people.
Yeah, 100%. And, look, if you guys want more specific content on any genre, let us know. We are here literally, apart from having a nice conversation with Dan, which I more than love, we're also here to entertain you. So do get in contact. Let us know what you'd like to hear in the coming days and weeks, and we'll give you some contact details at the end of the episode. But yeah, no, I echo that, Dan. It was a nice sentiment. And then we've got another listener, haven't we? We've got another one that's contributed via voice.
Yes, got Andy as well.
So we'll also give you some information about how to be like those guys, and perhaps you can be part of the show, and we can have a listen as to what you say. But Dan, I know you're itching to explain exactly the meaning of a disaster movie, because it's not as simple as perhaps I just opened up, which is poor of me. You've actually got a more of a breakdown as to the types, I guess, and what it means to be a disaster movie. So I'm going to hand over to you to open us up, and perhaps you can jump us into our first one. Given it is your genre of the podcast, I'm more than happy to let you kick us off this week.
Absolutely. I shot myself in the foot when I chose my 4 favourite disaster films for our favourite 90s films. So thanks to my other half, Claire, she actually helped me find out what constitutes a disaster film. So a disaster movie is a film in which a catastrophic event drives the narrative. During the disaster or in the aftermath, the main characters face conflict with each other, with their environment, or both, as they try to survive. Disaster movies are typically set in major cities where the destruction facing humanity can be demonstrated on a massive scale with visual effects. So we've got 5 types. Okay, so we've got natural disaster films, which feature acts of God like hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes, tsunamis, and earthquakes. We've got accidental disaster films, which feature unexpected problems arising from man-made technology or structures. Extraterrestrial disaster films, which feature a threat arising from space, including alien invasions, meteors, or comets.
One of my favourites.
Yeah. Monster disaster films, which feature one or more monsters that cause a path of destruction across a major city. So think Godzilla.
Or did anyone say dinosaurs? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Jurassic World 3, it's going to go mad. It's all going to kick off. Apocalypse films, the last one on the list, which feature a worldwide disaster that wipes out much of humanity. Threats like zombies may also feature.
So it's quite broad, Dan, isn't it? I never really thought of it like that, but I guess it's right, because in its very nature, they are disasters. They're not quite as the go-tos you'd expect. And it was interesting when I thought of it like that. Actually, I came up with a couple of ones which I thought, actually, I'm really happy I can now add those, because as you say, in the 90s ones, I think I had Independence Day, as did you, which could be classified as, well, the Alien one. And there's a couple of others, and you're thinking, well, crap, what we're going to do for this episode? But actually, you got a far more breadth. So I'm really excited to share with you, Dan, exactly what I've got. And there's a couple of obvious ones, and there's some not so obvious ones, thanks to the breakdown. But it's not about me, Dan. It's about you. This is your episode. This is your genre. What have you got for me? Because we haven't talked about this, have we, yet? So I'm learning with you, as you're going to be learning about mine as we say it. So it's all a surprise for everyone. What are you going to kick us off with this week?
Well, I'm going to start off with San Andreas, which ironically has some of the starring people with the most ridiculous names for me to try and pronounce. So I've shot myself in the foot massively with this one. So this is a film from 2015, And following a massive earthquake, Ray, who's played by Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, a rescue chopper pilot, and his wife try to find the location of their daughter before Earth's ultimate destruction. And it's set in San Francisco. I mean, like most disaster films, set in a major city. But not New York this time. I mean, every disaster happens in New York for some reason.
Yeah, it tends to be. I'm not sure whether there's a particular reason for that. Perhaps as island, city and population is easier to have everything thrown at it, and there's a sense of claustrophobia, maybe, I don't know. But you're right. New York gets a bum deal when it comes to the world of cinema. Everything, apart from, a lot of the superheroes tend to live there, there's not an awful lot of good happens to that city. It's a bad place to live, apparently.
So this one is directed by Brad Payton. It's produced by Beau Flynn, screenplay by Colton Hughes, and story by Andre Fabrizio and Jeremy Passmore. Just very quickly, I recognise Colton Hughes. Isn't that a guy who does lots of TV stuff? I'm pretty sure. So. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does lots of American TV. I'm going to Google it whilst you're going to explain to our listener exactly what we've got. So it stars Dwayne Johnson, or The Rock if you were a WWE fan, Carla Gugino, Alexandra Daddario. I want to say his name's Ian Grufford, but it's spelled IOAN. So if anyone wants to correct me, please send in a voicemail. We got Archie Panjabi and Paul Giamatti.
Good effort there.
Budget. This one, sorry. Yeah. Before I'll let you carry on. $110 million, and the box office it made $474 million.
That's not bad, given that you'd be very hard up to try and make a film and release it sub 250. That's not too bad, and The Rock ain't cheap, is he? He's one of the most bankable stars of modern cinema.
I mean, this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, Alex, but I don't think he's a brilliant actor. I think he's very typecast. Yeah. But I mean, it's a good film. I enjoyed it purely just to see like massive earthquakes and tsunamis hit San Francisco, and actually the challenge they faced trying to find each other. Now, Rotten Tomatoes was not kind to this film. They only gave it 51%. The website's critical consensus reads: San Andreas has a great cast and outstanding special effects, but amidst all the senses-shattering destruction, the movie's characters and plot prove less than structurally sound. Although IGN was a little bit more kinder, so they gave it a 7.5 out of 10, saying, there are some cracks in the foundation, but San Andreas is a solid popcorn fare thanks to sharp visuals and The Rock.
And it's interesting though, right? Because I've done obviously my research. I like to think I have, and also our listeners are fair game to give us feedback about whether we have or not. But I've looked at these, and a couple of times you look at critics and they'll go, "Yeah, that's a pile of Shyhawk," but then a lot of the audience go, "You know what? Actually, it's just fun." And I guess the question is, as we go through, do you really need like a believable plot, or is it for what it is? You're hungover on the sofa, you've just got a bit of McDonald's straight, all spilled down your top. You've got cold coffee sitting on the side. Your head's banging from last night. Do you really want an engrossing plot where the world's ending, or do you just want a really good kind of action, action romp? I guess really that's what it comes down to. What is it servicing? So it's interesting you share that critic's view, because I've got a couple of those that also kind of have that dichotomy and that challenge between one another. But it's an interesting one. What is the value of a disaster film, and does it need to be that intelligent?
No, I don't think it needs to be. I mean, you're there just to watch a bit of action and the world be destroyed by something.
Yeah. Just sorry, very quickly. Carlton Hughes, he did Lost, Dan.
Did he?
He did Lost in 2004-2010. He was executive producer and joint showrunner with Damon Lindelof. Now,
if he did the screenplay for the final episode, well, he needs to get lost in the sea, because that was absolutely tragic.
He does need to go down that plane. But no, interesting enough, and we haven't talked about this dating before, either on air or otherwise. Have you seen The Colony?
I haven't, no.
No, that's quite good. He's done Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, which is on an Amazon Prime exclusive. That's quite good. But Lock and Key, have you seen that?
No, isn't that on Netflix?
It is. Dan, get your eyes wrapped around that one. Actually, Lock and Key is really, really good. Quite dark, but it's reminiscent of those kind of, you follow the kids, they go into a new house, it's creepy, and they learn a bit about it. It's well trodden ground, but actually the actors are phenomenal, and actually the storyline is based on the comic book series is pretty good. It's on Netflix, as you say, Dan. The whole series is on there. I think there's about 12 episodes, I want to say. But yeah, Hughes was he did everything in it. He's a showrunner, exec producer, developer, and writer. And I think it's a pretty good show. So Lock and Key, that one is. But that's why I thought I'd hang on to that one and just stick with it to let our listeners know who he is. Because, yeah, he's had some missteps, but actually we've got heavy hitters behind this particular film. And he knows his stuff.
Good stuff. What's your choice? What's your first one?
I'm going to go for, and this is no surprise to people, it's The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, this was on my list. Fantastic choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saw this in the cinema way back in 2004, I want to say.
Yeah, 2004. They classify it as a science fiction disaster film. Don't quite know where the sci-fi is apart from, well, I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's co-written, directed, and produced by Roland Emmerich, as you know, it's quite famous, and starring Dennis Quaid, of course, as the dad, Jake Gyllenhaal, which is phenomenal, as the son, the teenage son, who's in, I think it's New York, isn't it? Yeah, it is. With the Empire State. Got Ian Holm, Emmy Rossum, and Celia Ward. Now, it is based apparently on a book called The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell and Whitley Strieber. Now, apparently, this is what it says here, the film depicts a catastrophic climatic, try and get my words in, effects followed by the disruption of the North Atlantic Ocean circulation in a series of extreme weather events that usher in global cooling and a lead to the new ice age. Now, I just know it as just a really good disaster film, Dan. I really enjoyed it, and the real sense of doom and impending doom, I think, is just quite artfully portrayed in the genre of movie. And to that extent, it was a major commercial success. So back in 2004, it actually became the 6th highest grossing film. It's not too bad, because you could have a good, 40 films released during the year? So I want to say some that go straight into the bargain bucket, but I'd like to say there's a fair amount. So it's not too bad. And it was also the highest grossing Hollywood film made in Canada. Budget was 125 million, which really surprised me, Dan, because there's an awful lot of CGI, which is actually half decent. I don't know how it fares today, probably poorly, but back then it was quite heavy. But it made a cool 552 mil. So it made a profit of 425 odd million, give or take. Yeah, that's decent.
That's a good take.
That's a really good take. Now, critics, and Anthony Lane from the New Yorker at the time, said, a shambles of dud writing and dramatic inconsequence, which left me determined to double my consumption of fossil fuels. which when I read that, I was like, what an absolute son of a bitch. That's amazing. Like, what a great way to describe how badly you think a film is, by doing exactly the opposite of what brings about the end of the world. However, the flip side is that Rex Reed, which was an awesome name of The Observer, said, for all of its dire premonitions, foreshadowings of horror, and easy targets for Jay Leno jokes, The Day After Tomorrow is an eye-poppingly awesome and wonderfully entertaining show. And actually, Dan, I couldn't disagree more perhaps with the last one. The first one, I can understand why you may say, for those who are hardcore of the genre, much like yourself, you may look at it and go, it's all right, but it's heavy effects. Whereas if you look at other things like The Birds, or you look at any other kind of Stephen King-esque type yarn, you look at it and go, yeah, it's not that rich in storytelling. But given the way things are going in global warming, whether you believe it or not, it does look like things could go that way. Not, as a supercell storm, but still in the longer term, coming about of a second ice age. So I think it's still relevant today as it was back in 2004. Now, I've got some particular favourite scenes, Dan, but obviously you've written some monkey into yours, but I think mine is actually seeing the eye of the storm. and the world-ending freezing cyclone. I think you see it as it travels around the globe, or at least North America. And there's just a quiet part of it where obviously everything's dead, silent and quiet. And then you just see this wall of death and freezing just engulf everything and anything, which is just phenomenal. The devastation of Europe. I seem to recall, wasn't Dennis Quaid in Scotland at the time? Wasn't he like an astrologist or something, where he was looking at the weather?
He had to trek across the globe to America, didn't he? To New York, am I right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think he left Scotland, which was about to get decimated, and sure enough, bless that nation, it did. It got absolutely ruined. And I think the last one that really sticks in my mind is when people are, I think, either traveling further north into Canada and Alaska, or further south to escape the freezing. They just see just these empty vehicles and people just huddled under overpasses and bridges to escape the freezing conditions. It's really quite like savage and harrowing. You could go for the big set scenes where, you know, the Statue of Liberty gets swallowed up in water and there's a big wall of water going through the streets of New York. But I mean, yeah, it's good, but I think the brutality and the horror truly is in the freezing conditions which travel across North America. Special mentions for me is Dennis Quaid as a concerned father. I think he's a great actor, and I think he does really well in this. And quite a young Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he takes probably his first real lead role as opposed to kind of teenager. And I think he really brings the drama to the end of the world. So I have a lot of love for this one. It's depressing. It's pretty miserable. But I actually think it handles quite an interesting subject in quite a good way. You could say it's a bit slapdash, but there's only so much you can do in an hour and 15 minutes or 2 hours 10. So I think it did very well. And I really enjoy it. But, I mean, Dan, have you got any thoughts on this particular one at all?
Do you know what? One of the scenes I always remember is the tsunami hitting New York and it just absolutely crashing into everything. And say everything in New York's really narrow, like people and cars getting swept away. And there's the dash for the library. And they make it, if I recall. And the library starts to sort of fill up with water. And then obviously the freeze comes along. I remember it sort of getting colder and they were trying to warm up at the fire. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but yeah, I really like it.
I think it's a good film. I mean, look, sure enough, guys, if we haven't mentioned any or you disagree with any of our comments, please do get in touch in the socials or leave a voice message. But I think it's one of the strongest ones I could start with, and that's why I've chosen Day After Tomorrow, because I think it just embodies everything that I'd want to look for if I was hungover on the sofa, wanting to watch something and get escaped in a film. It'd probably be this one, Dan, for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's totally bad because it won awards. Honourable mentions, it won a BAFTA for Best Visual Effects.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, and it won an MTV Movie Award for Best Action Sequence. Now, which one that is, I'm not too sure. I couldn't find it, but
I'll put money on the fact it's probably the one you described with the flooding of New York, and it is a good one, to be fair.
But I'm going to go into my next choice, which is Dogma from 1999.
Oh, that's an interesting one, Dan. Why did you choose that one?
So it's about two fallen angels who were ejected from paradise, and they find themselves banned in Wisconsin. They are now headed for New Jersey, where they find a loophole that can get them back into heaven. The only catch is that it will destroy humanity. A group bands together to stop them. Now, this is directed by one of my all-time favourite directors and podcaster, Kevin Smith. Produced by Scott Mosier and, again, written by Kevin Smith. And do you know what? The cast is actually really good.
Yeah, I seem to remember it's all star-studded, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon who play Bartleby and Loki. You've got Linda Fiorentino. You've got Salma Hayek, Jason Lee, Jason Mewes, Alan Rickman, who plays an angel, who is absolutely fantastic in this.
No way. Obviously, he's going to be, isn't he?
Yeah. He's not in it a lot, but when he appears, it's just brilliant. It's phenomenal. You've got Chris Rock, Alanis Morissette, who plays God, and then Kevin Smith is in it as well, of course, Jay and Silent Bob. Now, the budget for this wasn't massive, Alex. It was only $10 million.
What?
But it made $44 million. I mean, Kevin Smith films don't tend to stay in the cinema for that long, but he does make quite a good profit on them.
And I seem to recall this one ends up in being one of the cult classics. You know, a lot of people, I seem to think, liked it a couple of years after it had come out. I don't think it was a massive, I mean, 30 mil profit, whatever it was, wasn't too bad. But I think a lot of people found a following of this well after it went out into VHS. At least I know in my social circles as I was growing up, I haven't seen it, but I know a lot of people had done, and they raved about it, but it never went to cinema. Perhaps it was my age group, but I definitely know there's a fond place in people's hearts for this film. Who loved it long after it went from the cinema screens.
Well, it wasn't really until later in life that I really appreciated the Kevin Smith stuff. Things like Mallrats, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Chasing Amy, just examples. But all these films are tied in together somehow. Also, honourable mention to Clerks. Good film.
Yeah.
Black and white. But I love them now. Like, me and my other half have watched them all, and most recently the reboot, Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Mm-hmm. It's not that good, I don't think. But then I think in a way it's almost mocks the whole reboot idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Dogma did not go down well with some religious groups. In particular, the activist Catholic League, who denounced the film as blasphemous. Other groups staged protests outside theatre screenings, but the Chicago Sun-Times critic Roger Ebert noted that no official objection came from the Catholic Church itself. He said this: "We are actually free in this country to disagree about religion, and blasphemy is not a crime." Ebert awarded the film 3.5 stars out of 4.
That's not bad.
Rotten Tomatoes, it's actually not done too badly either. It got 67% with an average of 6.25 out of 10 from its 127 reviews.
Pretty good.
Critical consensus reads, provocative and audacious. Dogma is uneven but thoughtful religious satire that's both respectful and irrelevant. But I love it. I mean, it's good. I mean, what won't you like about a film when it's got a poo demon in it?
Wow. And also Alan Rickman.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a scene where he's not allowed to drink alcohol, but he's drinking tequila and then he's like spitting back out in the glass. Stupid, but it's still funny.
Okay. And that's going to go on my homework list, Dan, because I know a lot of people rave about it, and I think after we've been talking about it today, I definitely need to go and see it. Yeah, absolutely. Get on it. I mean, you probably pick it up for peanuts in the DVD shop. Yeah. Well, we can go out and buy DVDs. I might just try and find a stream of it, but that's one for me to watch. Okay. So what have you got up next? Yeah. I think I'm going to stick with the well-knowns, and then I'm going to go into two curveballs, Dan. I'm going to go for the Michael Bay, Jay Bruckheimer love child that is Armageddon. Oh, great shout. It would be remiss of us not to mention this. I know we talked about it before, but given the genre of this episode, it would be wrong for me not to mention it. So it is, of course, a 1998 classic. The film follows a group of blue-collar, deep-core drillers who are sent by NASA to stop a gigantic asteroid on a collision course with Earth. Now, who doesn't star in it, Dan? Well, I don't know who about that, but I can tell you who does, and that's Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, again, Billy Bob Thornton, Liv Tyler, Owen Wilson, who I forgot totally, Will Patton, Peter Stormare, William Fichtner, Michael Clark Duncan, Keith David, and Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi is always that weird baddie, isn't he? You just know when he's in there, he's always going to have a big role to play. But he's phenomenal in this one. Now, though the film was released to mostly negative reviews, apparently, it was an international box office success, becoming the highest-grossing film of 1998. Although, apparently, the people who know about this stuff, the astronomers, noted that the similar disaster film Deep Impact, which I think was it 6 months before us? This one I can't remember, but they were very closely released, weren't they?
Yeah, I think Deep Impact was sort of around 97, wasn't it? But they weren't far apart.
No. Apparently, Deep Impact was more scientifically accurate. So if you're looking for scientific accuracy, perhaps look at the less impressive cousin of this one, Deep Impact. But no, Armageddon, I mean, it all came out bells and whistles, didn't it? It had Steve Tyler singing the love ballad. I mean, it came.
I don't want to miss a thing. Yeah,
indeed, it came with a budget of 140 mil, and made a cool 553. So again, it's not a bad, decent return. I guess the marketing budget, I'm not sure if it's going to be in that. That's probably just production, so marketing, God knows what. But it was everywhere back in 1998. I do remember. Critics said, "Lovely to look at, but about as intelligent as the asteroid that serves as the movie's antagonist." Which is a bit savage. Armageddon slickly sums up cinematic legacies of producer Jay Bruckheimer and director Michael Bay. Apparently, though, the audience ratings had a higher rating, which is more than double the critics. I think the critics were like 36, and the audience was 72 or something. Favourite scenes for me, Dan, is the asteroids hitting the metropolis. I think they were. I try not to get confused with Deep Impact and Armageddon, but I think they both are preceded by smaller meteorites hitting the metropolis cities. You know, hitting skyscrapers and banging into cars and squishing people. And that's obviously how they know that this is happening, because parts are broken off and being hurled closer to the earth. I think that's quite an ominous, kind of out of the blue kind of foreshadowing, which I think was quite a nice way of doing it. And I think there's another president's address in this, I want to say. There was definitely one in Independence Day, which we talked about previously in the 90s films classics. But in this one, I think there's also, there is, isn't it, when they're taking off in their rockets, and the president basically brings the whole world together and gives them, of course it's the US president, and he's giving the announcement to the world about these drillers that are going off into space to save their lives, or to give their lives to save theirs. It's a tearjerker, because of course Liv Tyler's there bawling her eyes out because they just got married, blah blah. Anyway, I think those two scenes really stick out, and there must be really big scenes, because I haven't seen this film in quite a few years, Dan. But obviously, I know it's a very good one. Special mentions, I have to say, Ben Affleck. He gets some really tough love these days, but actually, I think his on-screen relationship with Bruce Willis and fiancée Liv Tyler just adds a brilliant element of despair, and you're bought into it. A lot of these disaster films, you're like, give a shit if they die. You care about the world because you live in the world, but you may not be able to relate to these superheroes who are running around, jumping from buildings or flying helicopters or outrunning dinosaurs. But I genuinely felt empathy for the characters, which just must mean that it's just expertly written. And I think most disaster movies lack. So those are things that stick out for me. Yeah, you're going to expect me to say it. I did say it, but actually I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think Armageddon does a brilliant job. And although I haven't seen it, you don't need to see it that often because it is bloody depressing, but I think it's a fantastic film. And it's gold standard. It's gold standard of movie disaster films, right? You've got the soundtrack, as I say. You've got the A-star listing. I mean, bloody hell, you've got Ben Affleck, who was in pretty good peak career, done Good Will Hunting, whatever. He'd already had quite a good recognition in the movie in Hollywood. You got Michael Bay and Bruckheimer steering the ship. I mean, between their writing and the action, the sequences and explosions, what is not to love about this film? So, yeah, phenomenal one at that. Armageddon is my choice, Dan. But obviously, you're the expert on disaster movies. Does this one even touch your list? Have you got mention of it?
It's not on my list, as I talked about it in favourite 90s films.
Yes.
But you know, the reason why it stands out for me as well as a disaster film, the hero dies. Spoiler alert. Bruce Willis dies.
You went straight out there, and I know it's like 12 years ago or whatever.
I mean, I remember seeing it at the cinema when I must have been 11, 12 years old, again, breaking the rules and going to cinema without my parents to see this one and lying about my age. But I think it was the first time I ever remember watching a film and going, hang on a minute, the hero just died. That blew my mind a little bit.
Because I don't know about you, Dan, but I wasn't expecting Bruce Willis to throw the towel in. But he does,
No.
in a heroic way. But you're like, oh, no, you'll get out of this because it's Bruce Willis. I said 12 years. Actually, it's 18 years. That's nuts. But, yeah, 18 years ago. Bloody crazy. But, yeah, no, I agree. You're not expecting it. And a lot of films, which I think the main hero, ends up snuffing it, like Gladiator. No one saw that coming. With Russell Crowe, and I think it really just turns the audience on their head because they expect obviously to the main hero to fly back in that rocket ship, and we're going to bin off Ben Affleck, but we don't. No. As you say, Willis snuffs it to save weedy Steve Buscemi's backside, and we have Bruce Willis to thank for saving the world. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal film. Definitely up there for me.
So next up, I've chosen 2013's Pacific Rim.
Oh, yes.
Ever seen this one?
Yeah, I saw the second one based on your recommendation of one of our more recent episodes. Were there reboots we did? Was it reboots or? Yeah,
or sequels. I can't remember.
But anyway, not bad at all. I think it's quite a good choice. And I think this thoroughly slots into the monster category, doesn't it, Dan?
It does. So in 2013, an interdimensional portal called The Breach opens at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, from which giant monsters, the kaiju, emerge, destroying various cities across the Pacific Rim. In response, humanity builds massive robots called Jaegers to combat the monsters. Now, this one is directed by Guillermo del Toro. It's produced by himself again, and Thomas Tull, John Jashney, and Mary Parent. Screenplay by Travis Beacham and Guillermo del Toro. He does a lot, doesn't he?
He does.
And a story by Travis Beacham. It's not got a bad cast. I mean, it's some very sort of fairly unknown, but you've got some big actors in there as well. So you've got Charlie Hunnam, Idris Elba, Rinko Kikuchi, I think I got that one, Charlie Day, Rob Kaczynski, Max Martini, and Ron Perlman. Now, the budget was between 180 and 200 million, so what's 20 million between friends, but unfortunately it didn't do too well at the box office, only raking in $411 million. So, yeah, it did do well, but I really love this one. I mean, it's basically Power Rangers on steroids.
Yeah, and I mean, perhaps the science fiction element with the robots puts people off, but I think they did a good job at portraying what's quite a difficult kind of concept, right? You got robots, you've got partners moving these robots with their joint brain functions, you've got Godzilla type monsters coming out of was it Mariana Trench or other type deep sea crevices, and it is a tough one. God knows how they sold it to the studio, because it sounds like an absolute car crash in writing and the way you describe it, but actually it's quite good, and I think I quite enjoyed it. The second one I thought lacked teeth, excuse the pun, but the first one I thought it was quite enjoyable, and yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it as being up there in terms of things to watch when you're on that sofa covered in chicken nuggets. But I actually agreed with that one. It's a good choice.
I mean, I think one of my favourite scenes as well, it doesn't sort of take place in your conventional city like New York or San Fran. There's a battle in the sea of Hong Kong Bay, and these monsters are absolutely trashing the place. If I recall as well, one of them sort of pulls out this massive sword from his arm and cuts this flying creature in half. Or it does something, but it's just so gross, but it's so good. I love it. I don't think it's that bad. I think Charlie Hunnam does a great job and he holds up well. And then you got again, Idris Elba, another hero who actually sacrifices himself to save the world.
It's phenomenal.
I mean, Rotten Tomatoes have been quite kind as well, giving it a 72% approval rating. And they said this: it may sport more style than substance, but Pacific Rim is a solid modern creature feature bolstered by fantastical imagery, and irresistible sense of fun.
What a mouthful. But
it is fun.
Yeah,
it's great to watch. Like I said, I don't think the second one sort of holds up quite as well as the first, but then I don't think it had Charlie Hunnam in it.
No.
But I think they did leave open for a third, and if that's the case, then I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
But after this one, I've only got one left, so I'm looking forward to some of your left field.
Yeah, well, let's go into them. So, Dan, a 2013 American apocalyptic action horror film.
Oh, I don't know. You're gonna get me now, aren't you?
A screen story by Carnahan and J. Michael Straczynski. And how do you know J. Michael Straczynski?
Did he appear in one of my previous choices?
No, he might actually. No, he is the writer of the more recent Thor comic run for Marvel.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Michael Straczynski, yeah, he's very talented. So actually, he wrote this based on a 2006 novel of the same name by Max Brooks. It's World War Z, or World War Z as we know it in this part of the world. Yeah, World War Z. World War Z. The film stars Brad Pitt, of course, as Jerry Lane, a former UN investigator who must travel the world to find a way to stop a zombie pandemic. Now, this ensemble supporting cast includes I can't pronounce any of these, mate. I'm going to do a Dan. Muriel Enos, Daniela Curtis, James Bargsdale, Ludi Boken. The names go on and just gets me deeper into the ground. So I won't Google them, guys. But basically, there's Peter Capaldi in there. We know Peter; he's British talent. But there's a number of other fantastic supporting actors in there that I can't pronounce. So apologies, guys. But Google them, and they're just phenomenal. I mean, I think they downplay Brad Pitt's character. He's not this big, bulky, muscly superhero that saves the world. He's supposed to be a geek. He's supposed to be a UN boffin who is basically like a scientist. He's an investigator. You know, that's not a sexy role. And I think the supporting cast around him really just helps to kind of make him more realistic. When you have in disaster films, you know, even like Dennis Quaid, didn't he do Twister as well?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. You have normal guys, you know, storm chasers. You kind of almost bought into them because you can imagine who they are and you could relate to them. Whereas if you've got a Dwayne Johnson piloting a helicopter with his wife hanging off the bottoms, driving, you know, flying through, a devastated California, perhaps not. But for this one, I think it's quite relatable as a character. Budget was 190 million, a fair whack. Well, to 190 and 270, which is quite a gulf, and made 540. So it wasn't great, but not bad. Critics said it's an uneven and diverges from the source book, but World War Z still brings smart, fast-moving thrills and a solid performance from Pitt to the zombie genre. And I can't comment on the book. I know that there are fans of them. I think there's a couple. But some of my favourite scenes, Dan. I mean, have you seen this one?
No, again, I think for myself, this is going to be a bit of homework. And so
yeah.
I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, unless it's the supermarket. I'll jump on board. Give it a go.
I would. I mean, I won't ruin it too much for you, but our listener who perhaps hasn't seen it. But there's particular scenes which I think you'll enjoy, which is it's about the first third into the film, and there's he travels. Pitt, as this reporter or investigator, travels, I think, to Jerusalem. And I'm not spoiling it by saying that there's these massive walls which they're enclosed upon, and they get overrun by these zombies. They become very intelligent, hyper-intelligent, and start climbing on one another and throwing themselves off, blah, blah, blah. very selfless in their destruction, if that's such a term. And there's this chase scene that goes through the narrow cobble streets of this old town of I think it's Jerusalem again, and it's very claustrophobic, and the fear is palpable because he's got to get out there. He now knows where he's got to go. He's got a thread of a potential to try and help save humanity, but of course if he snuffs it and gets eaten, or worse, converted into a zombie, the whole world is going to be, forsaken. And it even think about it now, it really gets your heart going because it's such a in your mouth, in your throat kind of moment. It's quite haunting. And there's another one where there's a night scene where this transport plane is taking him and his merry band across the globe, and it lands in what they think is deserted airfield that should be populated by military, and it's raining and it's dark and they find they're not alone. And I won't spoil it, but it's, again, it is a horror, it's an apocalypse, so therefore it's disaster, but I think it's really well directed, and I can't comment on the book. I think it's written masterfully, and I think Brad Pitt does a fantastic. I'm just making people's names up now. Brad Pitt does quite a good job at acting. I don't think he's dry. I don't think he's one-dimensional. I think he's really, really good. Special mentions. I mean, the direction, score is very good, and the acting I think is on point. And I don't think actually I felt tension like this since 28 Days Later, back in 2002. 28 Days Later, if you haven't seen it, is an indie film in the UK, guys, and it's I think it's a Film 4 production. And have you seen that one, Dan? 28 Days Later.
Freddie Renner in it. I can never remember. I've got zombie films now. I'm a bit like, I don't know.
They all do merge into one. I'm not too sure about that, but that one is freaky as whatever. It's horrendous. And again, that one
zombie run at people.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, creepy.
Yeah, it's the first kind of genre where the zombies kind of have the rage. 28 Days Later, I think, really brought it to the forefront, and this film kind of does that in spades, because as I say, they're hyper intelligent as a horde. Really good film. World War Z or Z. I won't see it that often because it's bleak. It's really bleak. But if you haven't seen it, perhaps one to leave with the lights on. It's very, very good. As I say, I think Brad Pitt does a very, very good job at getting you bought in. That's definitely one to watch, and that's why it's my number 3, Dan.
Well, keeping with the zombie theme, and my final choice is 2009's Zombieland.
Oh, excellent choice. Well done. Good choice, yeah.
Columbus, a college student, joins forces with 3 eccentric strangers to survive the zombie apocalypse and travel through southwestern USA to a safe haven. Now, this is directed by Ruben Fleischer, who was going to be doing the... what was the game called? We've talked about this a few times. Oh, it's going to have Tom Holland in it.
Oh, Uncharted.
That's it. So he's on board for that.
Perfect.
By Gavin Pallone, written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. Stars Woody Harrelson, who I think is fantastic and is very sense of humor.
Stand out for me for sure.
You've got Jesse Eisenberg, who's sort of like that sort of timid sort of guy. You've got Emma Stone, who's quite sassy, and then you've got Abigail Breslin, who was the child, right? Budget of $23.6 million, and at the box office it made $102.4 million. So it didn't do brilliantly, but the critics loved it, Alex.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes gave it an approval rating of 90%.
Wow.
The website's consensus reads, wickedly funny and featuring plenty of gore. Zombieland is proof that the zombie subgenre is far from dead. So, I mean, I guess in a sense it is like The Walking Dead, but it almost sort of mocks it a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They kill the zombies, like you've got them spinning on like theme park rides, shooting all these zombies as they're closing in. And something happens with the Ferris wheel, if I recall. Like crushes a few zombies.
Yeah, and Jesse Eisenberg lives by a number of different rules, doesn't he? And that's how the film opens up. Wear your seatbelt and do your cardio and Double Tap, and it's a dark comedy. It's tongue, as you say, Dan. It's tongue in cheek. It doesn't take itself seriously, and to that effect, you have Woody Harrelson, who does a phenomenal job at playing one of the lead roles. And I haven't seen the follow up. Have you seen the sequel, Dan?
I haven't yet. Is it out now?
Yeah, it would be on to download or stream. It's on my to-do list, but definitely the first one. It does have a special place in my heart. It's a great film. It's a good, funny comedy if you're looking for a light-hearted kind of apocalypse film, for sure.
I've just sort of punched away in Google while you were sort of talking, and yeah, it came out last year on 9th of October, so I guess it must be on DVD by now.
Yeah, it's called Zombieland Double Tap, isn't it?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Again, directed by Ruben Fleischer. That had a budget of 42 to 48 million, and it made 122.8 million at the box office. So again, not a bad turnover, but not as good as the first.
No.
Yeah, that is my final choice, but I love it purely because it almost mocks the zombie genre a little bit, with just some ridiculous killing.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
It's very tongue-in-cheek, but I love it, and that's why I've chosen it.
Good choice. Well, I'm going to finish on the curveball, Dan. I don't think you'd ever think for me to say this one. A 1999 American science fiction horror film directed by Rennie Harlin. Stars Saffron Burrows, Thomas Jane, Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Rappaport, and rapper LL Cool J. What am I talking about, Dan? Yeah.
I don't know. You got me at LL Cool J, though.
I know, right? He's not in many things. If I said to you, Intelligent Sharks, Deep Blue Sea.
Oh.
1999's turn of the millennium, Deep Blue Sea. Have you seen that one?
No, but as far as it's loved by many.
It's so good. I mean, it's set in a nice isolated underwater facility, and the film follows a team of scientists as they research on mako sharks to help degenerative brain diseases. And now the situation plunged into chaos when these sharks, the genetically engineered sharks, go on a rampage. They become self-aware. They become really intelligent. They flood the facility, and they turn the tables, becoming the hunter in a more kind of evil sense, tracking the occupants who must fight for survival to the surface. The budget was 82 mil and made 164, so again, not a massive great one return by more modern standards, but not bad nonetheless. Critics said Deep Blue Sea is no Jaws, but action fans seeking some toothy action can certainly do, and almost certainly have done, far worse for B-movie thrills. Now, I think for me, there's some favourite scenes. So, Samuel L. Jackson giving his rousing speech, and again, I'm not spoiling this because it happens very early on, Dan. He then gets unceremoniously chomped in half. He drops a couple of MF bombs, as he likes to do. That's his thing, and he's saying to people, "Come on now, buck your ideas up. We're gonna save the earth," and then gets eaten. Literally in mid-sentence. You don't expect it. It's quite funny, quite jarring, and more than a scare jump. But it's a great way to kind of have an exit of quite a well-known actor very early on in the film, and that's where you see it pulls no punches in terms of his gore. Also, there's another final scene in Showdown where the shark, should it get out, is going to be able to populate and go on a massive killing spree. And the main kind of protagonist ends up jumping into the water to try and, well, I won't spoil too much, but to try and kill the shark, but also to try and attract its attention from escaping. Special mentions for me is the direction of the script. I mean, it's bonkers. It's absolutely bloody nuts. You know, you got these sharks that are being bred, and they just end up being very, very dangerous and destructive, and it really gives you a sense of claustrophobia and thalassophobia, which is fear of the sea. So if you're going to go on summer holidays at some point, or you want to go for a quick dip in the Solent down on the south coast of the UK, you might not want to watch this film beforehand because it's going to give you some scare jumps. But I haven't seen it in a while, and if it was on TV, I can find a stream, I probably would watch it because it's a good watch and it's a good, enjoyable one to see. So it doesn't really fit the bill, Dan, but then by your definition, you've got 5 different categories or so. It actually does. So that's why I've chosen... Yeah, that's why I chose the Deep Blue Sea, because it's just on the peripherals of disaster movies, and actually it is pretty much a disaster, but not in the way that I'm implying. It's very, very good and left field, but that's what I've chosen, Dan.
So a little bit more homework for myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit the socials now with our listeners. So first up, my other half, Claire. She chose San Andreas. The Rock.
Very good.
The Rock as a helicopter pilot, massive earthquake, the reuniting of a family trying to survive, and a love story. It has it all. Oh, and Titanic. Classic disaster movie that still holds up today, in my humble opinion. Made more scary to watch because of the fact this disaster actually happened. Yeah,
it's been a while since I've seen it. I saw it in the cinema, but didn't they mix in real life submarine footage into the actual cinema version?
Did, yeah.
Which I think makes it even more kind of haunting. So I do agree with that. I'm not a massive fan of the film with the over the top love story, but I think such a grand ship, and seeing it in this condition, even as now, since 25 odd years since it came out in the cinema, it is really haunting to see the staircase underwater. If you Google it, it just gives you shivers. So it's a really good choice by Claire for sure.
Then I've got my namesake, Dan, who says The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I did ask him to elaborate, and he said, I still haven't made my mind up on it.
So he thinks it's a disaster in as much as it's not very good.
I think so. He never really elaborated other than a little gif that says, cool men don't look back after creating a mess. And you've got Iron Man, it's got an explosion behind him. Wolverine, big explosion behind him. Joker, explosion behind him. And then you've got J.J. Abrams with the Star Wars poster. So, yeah, I don't know if that's a bit tongue-in-cheek.
I think so.
Next up, we've got Kyle. He says, Independence Day is the best disaster film ever. Fact.
100%, Carl. Well done. Let us know when you want to come onto the show and we can talk about that film in great detail. I can't disagree. And the only reason why I haven't mentioned it is because in our 90s classics, we both had that one. But yeah, phenomenal film. Will Smith punches Alien in the face. Welcome to Earth. It's got it all, and it's wonderful. It's just a great film for sure.
Next up, we've got Hannah, who said Armageddon is my all-time fave, which we've both talked about over 2 different episodes.
Yeah,
can't disagree. It's a goodie. Last up on the socials, we've got Chris. And he says, does The Meg count as a disaster film?
I was thinking about that because I looked at Deep Blue Sea, but Deep Blue Sea just does it better.
Yeah.
If that's tongue-in-cheek and it's a car crash, probably. But I wouldn't know anyone who watched that film to see for its credibility. You're going to look at it for the blood and the gore and the B-movie type horror. It's tongue-in-cheek. So yeah, you could do actually. But if you haven't seen either, see Deep Blue Sea first and then watch The Meg. The Meg kind of is Deep Blue Sea on steroids. But yeah, you could do for sure.
He says, Jason Statham's accent in it is pretty disastrous. He's not wrong. On a more serious note, I did enjoy The Day After Tomorrow, which we spoke about earlier. Both our choices for this episode. Mm-hmm. And who could pass on Jurassic Park too? We did our 25th anniversary review a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Go check that one out.
Yeah, that'll be in the link below as well. Can't deny that is up there in the greats for sure.
But we had a couple of voice notes as well, didn't we, from Rob and Andy?
We did.
Who do you want to check out first?
Let's have a listen to Rob first and see what he says.
So this week discussing disaster movies. Well, there are a lot. I grew up in the 70s, which really, early to mid-70s, golden era. Poseidon Adventure, The Swarm, the airport movies, Meteor, Earthquake. There's so many of them. But then in 1977, the genre died. because of Star Wars. Then it was all about the sci-fi. So that brings me round to number one of my favourite disaster movies, and that's Independence Day. Main reason being, well, it reinvented and re-energised the genre of disaster movies. And then from there, look what we had. Devlin and Emmerich, again, with Godzilla. Day After Tomorrow, you had Deep Impact, Armageddon, your asteroid movies. You got Volcano, Dante's Peak. The list is endless. So that's why Independence Day for me. Another one you may never heard of. It's from 1961. It's called The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Very low budget British film, but it's a fantastic disaster movie. Really well scripted, and it's very well shot. I really suggest you get to watch it. Look it up. It's a really, really good film. Anyway, lads, just want to say, keep up the good work. Keep us all entertained while we're all locked down and shut away. No, we love what you do.
I mean, that's phenomenal knowledge, really, isn't it? I mean, he's...
We're in the presence of greats, Dan. I mean, these people clearly know a lot more than we do on the genre. And they watch these films for fun, not just for hangovers. Yeah. But yeah, some great comments there.
And it means a lot as well, as I said earlier, that we can bring a lot of joy to people in these strange times. I mean, so get involved. We want you on the show as much as you having to listen to us talk. So get involved. We'll put the socials in at the end.
We will, 100%.
Next up, we've got Andy. Again, more greatness.
Okay, two favourites or two good things, two good disaster movies were made in 1983 and 1986. One in 1986 was Where the Wind Blew, or Blows, and also 1983, it was The Day After. Okay, I've got another one for you. Night to Remember, 1958. It's, Kenneth Moore was in it, filmed in black and white, and it also starred the late Honor Blackman, who passed away yesterday. Now, that was the first of all disaster movies, based on a true life story, based on the true story of the sinking of the Titanic. So, yeah. A classic black and white film, as I say, starred Kenneth Moore, starred Honor Blackman, David McCullum, who played the Invisible Man.
And I guess that's it for this show, Alex. I mean, that's some good content from those two.
Yeah, well, again, we pale in significance compared to these guys who clearly have disaster movies in the background all day long. So they've got some recommendations there, and some. I think they're all classics in their eyes. So if you want to take any of their recommendations, perhaps you haven't seen some of the more popular old school, you certainly have got some films to watch, and I certainly will be. So thank you guys for your comments and your contributions. Those aren't films I have actually seen before, so I think I definitely will do. And if there's any others that you guys perhaps wanted to pick up, I mean, Vulture.com, they mentioned their top 5 as Titanic, Towering Inferno, The Birds, Night to Remember, and Miracle Mile. And Screen Rant say The Impossible, which is the Ewan McGregor true story of the tsunami, which plagued Asia. The Birds again, so perhaps that one's to go and watch. Gravity, which is an interesting choice. Apollo 24, and Twister.
Oh, I love Twister.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of popular ones there. Some that perhaps go unmentioned, and some old school and some classics from our listeners. So yeah, we've got lots of there to feast your eyes upon, and plenty for me to watch, Dan, at least in my own homework as well.
Yeah, same. But if anyone wants to get involved, I mean, we've got a couple of episodes coming up, so we'll be doing our second birthday AMA. Get your words out, Dan, get your words out. So we want your questions. It can be pop culture related, podcast related, or if you want to know a little bit more about me and Alex. And we also want to talk about acting divas.
Oh, yes.
So if anyone wants to get involved on those, we are on the Weekly Roundup with Alex Zan on Facebook. We're on Twitter at hello_TWRAD. We're on Instagram at hello.twrad, and of course we've got Gmail, which is hello.twrad@gmail.com.
We have. And if you want to leave us a voice message, there's a handy little link in the description below. All you've got to do is click on that, allow the use of your mobile device microphone, and you can leave us, I don't know if there's a time limit on there, Dan, but it's a lengthy amount of time to leave us a voice message, and we can put you straight into the show like you have done for our listeners in this episode. So please do get in touch. We've got a number of different ways. We're always interested to hear your views and opinions. We've had quite a few in this episode, which is great. It struck a chord. But if you want to give us any more details on any other upcoming episodes, then please do let us know. We love to do these podcasts, and we only do it for you guys. So please let us know. It is your views, your podcast, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage it. If anyone wants to talk to me, I'm on Twitter quite often. I sort of flip between my personal account and the Weekly Roundup. Someone actually challenged me on one of our posts for Divas the other day, and they never got back to me after I replied.
Oh dear.
But I'll talk more about it when we talk about the Divas. But I put something up and I got shot down. And we don't really do our research until we sort of build up to an episode. We just put stuff on there to sort of
insights and comments. So
that taught me something.
I'm looking forward to that story, Dan.
But yeah, I'll be talking about this specific diva brackets, commas, whatever they are, speech marks. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Cool.
Well, I suppose on that note, we better go clap for our heroes on the front lines with 2 minutes away. So I've been Dan.
I've been Alex. I'm going to stay out to sea and start watching some disaster movies. Stay safe, everyone. Get in touch. Let us know how you're getting on. But otherwise, we'll see you next week.